Okay, let's start this deep dive thinking about, well, about the weight we all seem to carry, you know? This kind of invisible emotional luggage we've maybe been hauling around for years. It's like we all walk around with these backpacks just filled with stone.
Mm-hmm. And those stones, they aren't always, fresh anger or obvious grief. So often, they're memories wrapped in this quiet, aching tenderness. That moment someone humiliated you, or the day a relationship just ended. Maybe a failure from years ago that somehow branded you as well as not enough.
Exactly, and we stitch those moments right into the center of who we think we are. We carry the past like it's still happening right now.
We do. We hold on to them so tightly.
Yeah, that's why I started with the weight. We
Yeah.
cling, we cup our hands around these things, trying to hold them perfectly still. It reminds me of standing by a river, early morning. And you try to hold on to the water that just flowed past. You clench your hands, but it just slips through, doesn't it? It's always flowing. And I think the river whispers something really essential there. Nothing stays. Not the pain, not the glory moments either. Not even this fixed idea we have of the self that's doing the remembering.
It's beautiful, but also a bit terrifying, that realization.
It is.
Because if nothing stays, then why? Why do we put so much energy into fighting the current? Why cling so hard, especially to the moments that caused us the most pain? We mistake the weight of that story, that burden, for the actual truth of our lives right now.
It does seem strange, doesn't it? Why hold on to something that genuinely hurts?
Well, the clinging it's deep. In some of the philosophical ways of thinking about this insistent need to grasp, it's called upadana.
Vipadana.
Yes. And it comes from something called tainsha, often translated as a craving. But it's much deeper than just wanting something concrete, like a cookie. It's more like this fundamental ache to solidify our experience, to freeze what's fluid into some kind of fixed shape we feel we can manage or control.
So instead of letting, say, a harsh word just pass through.
Exactly. Instead of letting it flow by, we grab it. And then we build this elaborate temple around it. It's quite substantial in our minds. We don't just remember what happened. We essentially move into that temple and start, worshiping the ghost of what happened, letting it dictate what comes next.
Wow, so it's not just remembering, it's actually building an identity around it.
Precisely. Identity construction.
And that fits so well with the psychological angle too. The mind seems absolutely desperate for a narrative. It needs a story, any story sometimes, to make the chaos feel tolerable. So if the world feels unpredictable, maybe even scary, having an internal story like, oh, I failed because I'm just unworthy, it actually offers this weird kind of safety.
Right, it's painful, but it's a known script.
Yeah, it feels more manageable than the stark truth, which might be life is unpredictable and stuff just happens sometimes. That demands this terrifying surrender to not knowing.
And we often choose the false sense of control that comes with the painful story, rather than face the sheer vulnerability of unpredictability. And that really brings us to this profound paradox of protection, doesn't it?
How so?
The story you chose, maybe the one that helped you cope with the rejection or some trauma years back, it served a purpose then. But now it can act like prison walls. You start confusing the mask you put on for survival with your actual face. Philosophically, you could say this is living inside the illusion of sakayati. Yes, the belief in a truly fixed, unchanging self. I am shy. I am broken. I'm just not good with relationships. These labels become like solid statues inside us.
And if we look at the brain science, it sort of confirms this, right? The brain acts like a prediction machine.
Yeah.
It takes past data, especially stuff linked to strong emotions like pain, and uses it like a compass for the future.
And anticipates.
So if disappointment or trauma created that initial story, the brain then subtly guides us to act in ways that make the story come true again.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Like if you deeply believe, I always mess things up in close relationships, your brain, trying to protect you from more pain, might lead you to pull back or avoid real intimacy or even unconsciously sabotage something good, all disguised as instinct or self-protection. It's conditioning, pure and simple.
It is.
So the big question is, how do we even start to recognize that conditioning before it completely maps out our future?
Well, the recognition, I think, begins when we understand that this conditioning, this resistance, is really the root of what's called dukkha.
Dukkha, often translated as suffering.
Yes, but suffering is maybe too narrow. A richer way to think about it is pervasive dissatisfaction, or even resistance to flow. This dukkha arises precisely because we resist the fundamental nature of things, which is impermanence. We insist that a fleeting moment from the past should still hold absolute power over who we are today. We want ourselves and the world to be fixed and predictable. But the universe just doesn't operate that way. It's all change.
Okay.
Think about that classic image, the monk sweeping the temple courtyard every morning.
Wow.
The monk knows perfectly well the dust is just going to settle again in an hour, right? The point isn't to achieve some final dust-free state forever. That's impossible. The point is the act of sweeping itself, the deep engagement, the presence in this moment, the pain, the memory. It's not the core problem. Our insistence that it defines us forever, that's the problem.
Wow, okay. That really reframes things. So if the goal isn't to erase the memory or fight the dust, but just to be present with what is, what's the first practical step? How do we gently, put those stones down, let them rest on the riverbank instead of clutching them?
The first step, crucially, isn't denial. And it's not aggressive self-help, trying to banish the thought. It's mindfulness. And it involves making a very subtle but powerful distinction. It's the distinction between awareness and identity.
Awareness versus identity.
Okay, so let's say that old familiar thought pops up. You are a failure. If your immediate reaction is, yes, I am a failure, look at all the evidence, that's identity speaking. You've merged with the thought. But if you can pause just for a breath and observe, I am having the thought that I am a failure. Can you feel the difference?
Yes, there's space there.
That's awareness speaking. Identity built on old pain is like a cage, maybe even a familiar cage, but still a cage. Awareness is the space that notices the cage itself.
And the really tricky part for anyone listening is that these painful thoughts, they feel so true in the moment. They don't feel like just thoughts. They feel like solid facts about reality.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They carry immense conviction. And that's largely because we tend to hold such a rigid, fixed view of who we are, of the self. And this leads us right into the heart of the teaching of anatta.
Anatta, often translated as no self.
Yes, but that translation can be a bit misleading. It doesn't mean you don't exist or that you're just a void. Not at all. It means that the self we think of as this stable, continuous character in our life story is actually more like a temporary, constantly shifting constellation of things.
I'm a constellation.
Yeah, a constellation of thoughts, feelings, body sensations, perceptions, all arising and passing. Think of yourself less like a solid statue and more like a wave in the ocean.
Okay.
The wave has a temporary form, right? It looks distinct for a moment, but it's never ever separate from the water itself. Anatta suggests we're mistaking the wave, this temporary pattern, for the entire ocean of awareness.
And we spend so much energy trying to keep that wave shape stable, especially if the shape is defined by past pain. If we believe, deep down, I am damaged, we then subconsciously filter everything to confirm that belief. Isn't that what modern psychology calls schema reinforcement?
Exactly that, schema reinforcement.
We replay old arguments in our heads. We might even gravitate towards relationships that sadly echo our old wounds. Or we just avoid taking risks altogether, all to prove the limiting belief right.
We actively gather evidence, often unconsciously, to validate our own suffering.
It's like being your own biased prosecutor. And the really cruel twist, as you touched on earlier, is that so many of these deep, limiting narratives weren't even written by us initially. They were handed down by maybe a critical parent or a tough experience or just the culture we swim in that equates our worth with constant doing and achieving. How do we even begin to untangle that external programming?
We start by turning our gentle curiosity towards the narrative itself.
Yeah.
We shift the question. We stop asking, is this memory totally accurate? Or is this feeling true in some ultimate sense? And instead, we ask a much more useful, more operational question. Is this story, right now, serving my awakening? Or is it serving my suffering?
That's a very different question. Not is it true, but is it serving me?
Precisely. Notice the distinction. A story can be factually true. Maybe you did lose a job 10 years ago. That's a fact. But if you insist on dragging that fact into every single new job interview today, using it as a pre-written verdict that you're bound to fail again, well then that story, even if factually rooted, is actively serving your suffering now. It becomes like this dead weight from history that's blocking presence and any sense of new possibility.
That completely shifts the power dynamic, doesn't it? It's not about fighting the past anymore. It's about choosing how or even if we use it in the present.
Exactly. And when you start to really get that the self is just this temporary collection, this constellation, you begin to access the space in which the self arises and passes. This points towards the profound concept of shunyata, often translated as emptiness.
Emptiness, that sounds a bit bleak.
It can sound that way, but we need to be careful with the word. It's not nothingness or some kind of depressing void. Not at all.
Yeah.
Think of it more like the open sky.
Okay, the sky.
All the clouds, joy, grief, failure, success, all our thoughts and feelings, they rise and pass within the vast openness of the sky. The clouds are real, they change shape, they bring rain or sunshine. But the truly liberating insight is, you are never the cloud. You are the sky. You are the awareness that notices the clouds passing through. The sky doesn't need to fight the clouds or cling to the sunny ones. It just allows them.
Wow. And the immediate benefit of just glimpsing that, of stepping back and being the sky, it feels huge and actually very practical. Think about the sheer amount of mental energy, psychic fuel we pour into maintaining those painful illusions, justifying them, rehearsing arguments, protecting ourselves, avoiding risks.
Yes, enormous energy.
When you start to let go of that script, doesn't that energy just flood back into your actual life right now? You reclaim all that cognitive power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's freed up for presence, for creativity, for connection. And that silence you mentioned earlier, that becomes our greatest strength. That tiny pause between the old conditioned thought, I'm going to fail,
Yeah.
and the habitual reaction pulling back. That pause, that stillness underneath all the mental noise of who you think you are. That's where freedom is actually found.
The stillness is where the story loses its grip.
It loses its gravity.
Yeah.
So let's make that stillness really practical for a moment. When that old story arises, I'm not ready, I always mess this up, I failed before. The practice isn't to argue back. Don't try to force it away. That just gives it more energy, paradoxically.
Right.
Instead, just use gentle observation. You simply label it softly in your mind. Something like, there's the not enough story again. Or even just conditioning arising. Just naming it like that starts to drain its power because you're separating from it. You're seeing it instead of being it. It's like turning on the light in a room you thought was haunted by a ghost, only to find it was just your coat hanging on the back of the chair.
I like that. Seeing the coat, recognizing it's just a story, and then choosing not to put it on today.
Yes, that's beautifully put. And this is really the essence of that wonderful lotus flower analogy too, isn't it? The lotus grows up through the mud. It actually uses the mud, those difficult stories, the messy conditioning as nourishment. And then it rises above it all, blooming in the light. You were never meant to stay buried down there in the conditioning. The mud is the material, yes, but you are the potential for transformation, the bloom.
It feels like the ultimate realization here is that true freedom isn't about finally arriving at some perfect, fixed, story-free state. Maybe it's more about the courage to live without a fixed script. Choosing the messy, unpredictable, beautiful reality of this present moment instead of clinging to a perfectly rehearsed, painful past. We stop needing to be the main character in the drama, and we step into just being the awareness in which the whole drama unfolds.
That is the path of liberation. Beautifully said. And in that space, the practice becomes these small, consistent, microscopic acts of presence. So perhaps here a final, simple practice you, the listener, can take with you.
Okay.
If it feels right, maybe just place a hand gently on your heart right now as we draw this to a close. And just try this. As you inhale, gently acknowledge the old story. Breathe in the shame, the sense of limitation, that fixed idea of who you are. Accept it fully, kindly, as part of the human condition. No fight. And then as you exhale, breathe out space, breathe out light, breathe out possibility, and maybe even breathe out a little forgiveness for ever having believed that coat was really a ghost.
Inhale a story, exhale space.
Yes, maybe do that just 3 times a day, or whenever you remember. This is how liberation is actually built, not in one grand gesture, but in these tiny repeated acts of inner transmutation. Because the very moment you stop spending your energy defending an old story about who you are, you become available to write a new life moment by moment. You gradually stop needing to ask, who am I? And you simply start living the answer freshly each day. The ultimate liberating truth perhaps is simply this: you are not the story you've been telling yourself. You are the freedom to stop telling it.